Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 3, Assimilation. Well, it picks up where Episode 2 left off, with a standoff on Rios' ship between Seven's husband and the crew of Picard's little found family.
Yeah.
I don't know what to call them. And of course, Elnor was shot at the end of the previous episode. And it goes the way you think it would go. They fight. The husband and his security crew are killed.
Well, they weren't just killed. I realized that as Picard's people were jumping the people who were saying stick them up, but they were grabbing those weapons and just vaporizing those people.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing their weapons were originally set to that level, so I'm not going to hold it against the Picard people for doing that, but just pointing out that we got to see people vaporized.
Yeah, and one of the things that Seven's husband said was that this was in response to what Elnor had done, killing those officers on that other ship.
And we talked about that in our last video.
Exactly. So we knew that was going to come back to bite them in the ass, and sure enough it did. While this fighting is going on, Agnes is desperately trying to get the Borg Queen all hooked up to the ship. I actually genuinely laughed at this next part because the Borg Queen fell over on her face. Agnes looked like she fell on her face. It was actually a funny moment. I don't know if it was intended to be funny, but I actually genuinely laughed. The first 15 minutes of this episode I actually enjoyed for all the wrong reasons, because it felt like some sort of fan film or even ASYLUM production, which I just want to say, I said in our last Discovery video that Sharknado was not done by the ASYLUM. It was. So I should have known that because I love ASYLUM films and I love Sharknado, but I guess I was having a brain fart that day. So ASYLUM, responsible for Sharknado. So thank goodness for the ASYLUM, because they've brought a lot of joy into what has been kind of a dreary existence these past few years.
Well, I agree that the first 10 or 15 minutes of this, I didn't think it was Star Trek, but like you mentioned, the ASYLUM, and the ASYLUM's known for making knockoff films, so you kind of know the plot, but they do it in kind of a funny or weird way. That's what this felt like. Unlike Discovery, when I try to watch Discovery, I can't flip that mode into fan film because there's this, you can just tell this hatred that the people behind the Discovery production, you can tell they hate Star Trek. So I can't flip that switch and go, oh, okay, I'll just roll with the punches. But for the first 10 or 15 minutes, this felt like a fan film. Like I flipped that switch on. I was enjoying things. I was enjoying as you mentioned, the thing that fell over. And then later on, there was this other thing that you'll mention here in a few minutes, I'm sure, where the Borg Queen's torso was kind of up in the air. And as they were flying their ship, you had to look, but in the background you could see it because you pointed out to me. And that was a genuinely funny thing.
Oh, it was fantastic because Agnes was struggling to get the Borg Queen all hooked up. But then when she fell over, the Borg Queen got loose from that little container that they had her in. So then she hooked herself up and she just took over. And she's just this torso hanging there in a T pose in front of the green
whatever
lights.
Those things are on the back of Rios' ship.
Yeah, it looks like some sort of I don't know, some sort of energy conduit area, whatever. But it was hilarious because yeah, she was hanging there, and you would see her in the background when they're showing like Rios in the captain's chair and Seven and Picard there trying to maneuver their way out of this fight, and she's just hanging there in the background. It was just the funniest thing I've seen in a long time.
Yep, and I thought that maybe, oh my gosh, we're actually going to get an enjoyable episode of Picard where, as you mentioned in our last Discovery video, the people making this type of stuff, like there's not a stick up their backside, like they actually understand, a little bit about enjoying this sort of thing. And if you're going to do member berries, at least if you got your wink, wink, nod, nod, like an ASYLUM film, you can go along with it. And I thought we were going to have an hour's worth of that sort of fun. Unfortunately, it didn't last much longer than the 10 or 15 minutes at the start.
Yeah, it lasted 15 minutes. And then it went back to its usual crap.
I would argue it was even worse than their normal. I mean,
It was.
they reverted back to their season 1 crap, because the first 2 episodes of this, I think I was praising it a bit more than you, but I was giving Picard season 2 the benefit of the doubt, saying this is better than season 1, and they were doing things that, even with member berries, felt Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
But after the first 10 or 15 minutes of this episode, not only did they revert back, but they reverted back to that mean-spirited season 1 stuff.
Oh, yeah. It turned into a preach fest, and a tone-deaf one at that, but I'll get to that in a few minutes, I'm sure. So anyway, the Borg Queen got control of the ship. She took out the 2 ships that were attacking them. Then she did her slingshot maneuver, and they went back in time. She used up all of her energy, I guess. So now the ship is crashing. Picard asks for nav control. I don't know exactly what his role was to begin with. I mean, he's sitting there. I assumed he was flying the ship, and Seven was in charge of guns, and Rios was sitting in the captain's chair, but it just seemed strange.
Yeah, it was weird to me when this all went south and they had to get away, and they all ran to stations on the bridge. Picard ran to what I think was Helm. And at first I was scratching my head going, well, why wouldn't he be commanding this whole thing? But then I'm like, well, maybe he was the best pilot on the ship of what was there.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, that's why he's there. And then Seven sat next to him, so I assumed she was working weapons. And then Rios was in the captain's chair, and he had all that dumb holographic stuff that they usually have up.
He must have been the pilot, because later in the episode, they tell this little story where he was some sort of 8-year-old flying prodigy.
Based on what they were on the bridge.
Yeah.
And you're right. If that's the case, then Rios should have been flying the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question is, at that captain's station with the holograph, the hologram stuff, like, what was he doing? Because it seemed at times like he was flying and controlling weapons from the captain's chair. If that's the case, what was the point of the 2 stations in front of him?
Yeah, good question.
I mean, are they just supposed to sit there? Because then later on, somehow control was released, and so Picard took over setting the destination for something at that station. And it was really weird. I wasn't sure how any of the technology worked on that bridge as far as who was doing what.
Yeah. And once Picard got nav control, he said he was going home. So he crashed the ship somewhere. I just assumed he crashed it on the Picard estate in France, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know where he actually crashed that ship.
Yeah, I don't either. And I guess we should make sure we point out that during them escaping from Seven's husband, Elnor got shot.
Yes.
And Rafi was taking care of him.
Yeah. So while all this is going on, Rafi is tending to Elnor in sickbay. And I guess the medibed is what was keeping him alive. And now the Borg Queen is siphoning off all the power to keep herself alive. Rafi, she thinks they should have killed the Borg Queen in order to save Elnor. The others are explaining to her that they need the Borg Queen so that they can fulfill their mission, because she has critical information as to where the Watcher is and when time goes off the rails, the event that takes place. Rafi was acting irrationally because, again, yeah, Elnor died. But you know what? When you're on an important mission like that, sometimes you lose people. The more important thing was fixing what went wrong in time. The mission was far more important than Elnor's life. And she's acting like this is all Picard's fault. It was some sort of failure of his leadership because he wouldn't kill the Borg Queen to save Elnor. I mean, it was ridiculous. And this is when the episode just completely started going off the rails.
She went into this weird discussion about, oh, you and Q, you like to toy with people and joust back and forth. And I mean, I'm looking at the screen going, this doesn't even make any sense. Q is part of this extremely powerful race. What is Picard supposed to do against that? I mean, the best he can do back when he was a human was use his human will to try to say, no, Q, I'm not going to go along with your bullcrap.
Yeah.
But her arguments made no sense, and you and I talked while it was running here, And what we're thinking is, and this seems kind of sexist, but okay, I guess that's what they were trying to do, is they were trying to, I'm guessing Rafi was bonding with Elnor, like, because in the first season, she had an estranged relationship with her child.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why she was, like, out of the blue so protective of this situation.
Well, plus, didn't her son marry a Romulan?
I think so.
I believe he was having a baby with a Romulan.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she's projecting onto Elnor, her grandson or granddaughter.
But we're guessing that.
Yeah.
It would have been nice in narrative if they would have said or showed why she was being so protective of this. We're putting it together ourselves based on season 1, but it was never explicitly stated. We're guessing here. But what she was saying was, she was talking like an unbalanced person.
Yeah.
When she was going after Picard and you two like to joust back and forth, and all of that's just not true. Like, all of that's not true. It's hard to like the Rafi character. I mean, I had troubles in season 1 with it when they gave her that crack pipe and she was an alcoholic, and I had trouble with her then. But so far this season, I was mostly okay with her.
Mm-hmm.
But that rant that she went on, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so Elnor died, and he had this medallion that he would wear. I don't even know the significance of that, because frankly, whatever. Now she's wearing it. We see her wearing this medallion through the rest of the episodes. I don't know if that's going to come into play later in the season. It sure as hell better, because otherwise, what was the significance of that? You know, it was just another stupid moment that they put in there for, the feels.
Her motivation is not for the mission they originally went on. She wants to write the timeline so that Elnor can be back alive. And she was getting upset with people, Agnes and Picard. So if I set the timeline straight, Elnor's going to come back. Right? You better give me an answer. I mean, it was just weird crap. And that's her motivation now, is just so she can get Elnor back.
Yep, exactly. And, I mean, at least there was another hilarious moment while all this was going on. They were trying to unhook the Borg Queen to stop her from draining energy from the ship, and it was just so funny watching this crew yanking on the Borg Queen's connections to the ship as if they'd be able to yank those out so that they could unhook her. I mean, it was freaking hilarious. I don't think it was meant to be, but I was just sitting there laughing because it just looked so stupid.
Yep.
And at this point, this is where Picard basically says that Rafi is being too emotional, so she can't go off on her own. So Seven and Rios are going to go with her, and they're going to this tallest building in LA or some shit to scan for alien technology to try to find the Watcher. They're warned before they're sent there to be careful of the butterfly effect, because they don't want anybody to pick up on their ID implants or their
medical compliance chip, and we're saying it that way because we'll get kicked off YouTube if we use the right terminology.
Yeah.
But they actually mentioned the V word when it came to medical compliance chip.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, well, when did that become a thing? I just kind of felt like it was, again, shoved in there to further a narrative. It felt like it was more preaching down to the people. This whole Hollywood narrative. We're watching this after that whole Will Smith incident at the Oscars. And these people in Hollywood,
they're out of touch.
Yeah, they I don't know if they think that they're better than everybody else. I mean, they probably do. Their behavior is just bizarre. Like, I don't even know how to really describe what I'm seeing here. Like, these weird preaching messages that they put in these shows, because this episode of Picard was horrible with them, and I'll get to that in a second. It's just weird. It's weird. I don't know what these people are doing. They're pushing an agenda, that is for certain. But the agenda that they're pushing is just so oversimplistic. It's like they really don't have a good grasp of what's really going on.
It's like a child mentality.
Yeah, it's a very childlike view of things. And
because our current world is really screwed up.
Yeah.
But what they're thinking is the problems and solution. They are so off base. That's what you would expect a child in grade school to understand how the world works.
A privileged child.
Yeah.
You know, one that has the helicopter parent and has everything given to them, like a spoiled brat would think. And I guess that's what all these Hollywood people are, just a bunch of spoiled brats. So anyways, back to the episode. In order to fix the Borg Queen, Agnes wants to let the Borg Queen partially assimilate her, to which Picard initially says no. Obviously, since they even brought it up, that's what they're going to go ahead and do. The Borg Queen is going through Agnes's mind rooms, which reminded me of an episode of The Venture Brothers, if anybody watches that. Yeah, the Venture Brothers version was much, much better.
That was funny, too.
Yeah, it was funny, and this, like, what are you going to find in Agnes's head anyway? You know?
Rocks.
She's this anxious, over-emotional, just... She comes across like a real twit. I don't even buy her as some sort of...
She's like this series Tilly.
Yeah, that's exactly what she is. And, you know, Tilly also was made out to be some sort of genius or really smart person. And I didn't get that from either of them. Like, just because you say somebody is really smart and that they're playing an intelligent character doesn't mean that the actor or actress in this instance can pull it off. I saw the same thing with Jodie Whittaker in Doctor Who. She doesn't strike me as intelligent for even half a second. She comes across like a moron, which again, a lot of it has to do with writing, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that she was just miscast. Some people are just really over-intelligent brainiac types. Some people don't have that in them, and if you don't have that in you, I just don't think you can fake it.
When I see Agnes on there, I'm thinking of like a teenage girl or a teenage person. It doesn't have to just be a girl. Where somebody's inexperienced, they're awkward. Again, it's Tilly. This is Tilly 2.0 is what they make Agnes.
Yeah, she has no self-confidence whatsoever. And she would think she would at least be confident when she's dealing in her own subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, how the hell did she get the position that she has? She wouldn't, not in real life anyway. Hollywood, you gotta do better. Because I am so sick of this crap. Just terrible writing, terrible casting choices, terrible direction. I'm like, what the hell? Enough is enough already. So anyway, she does this whole half assimilation thing. She manages to steal information from the Borg Queen. She put it in a file called Shit I Stole from the Borg Queen. And
well, that's another thing I was going to mention. I don't know why they're using so much profanity in this episode. Not only were they using shit, they used bastard a couple of times.
Oh yeah, it was bastard this and bastard that.
And then when Elnor was hurt and Raffi was trying to find medical supplies, I guess, and she's like, I can't find anything on this goddamn ship.
Yeah.
Again, I could see the damned part being in there, but there's a difference between saying damned this and goddamn this. I don't know why they keep doing this. I have no idea why they're adding this edge to it. Because I'm trying to remember, I think Rios was talking to somebody on the ship, and he kind of leaned over and said, yeah, something about shit. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, it doesn't add anything. I mean, what was that? Wasn't there a SpongeBob episode where...
Sentence enhancers.
Yeah, they called profanity sentence enhancers.
Oh, yeah, that's a great episode. So, I mean, hey, if you want to have a good time and laugh your ass off, watch that SpongeBob episode. I'll put the exact episode number on the screen so that people can find it. But yeah, the sentence enhancers, it was hilarious.
Because it doesn't add anything. It just makes it sound like I'm like a middle school kid wrote this. And it's edgy because they're sticking in some quote-unquote cuss words. It doesn't flow with the dialogue that they're doing. It's almost like it's inserted. You know, like when they redo like voiceovers, when they mess up dialogue and they go back and they redo the audio. It almost sounds like that's what they're doing, is they're just inserting in these words or phrases. Now, they're not doing that. Mm-hmm. It's just that awkward. It's like, why even put that in there? That really doesn't belong in Star Trek.
They think that they're trying to edge it up to, I guess, appeal to the people who decided they like the Orville better than Discovery and Picard.
Yeah, but it's kind of like if your parents or an old uncle like tries to sit down and use common slang and lingo with you.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
And it's weird. It's like, no, I mean, these Star Trek people using that type of language, it doesn't fit in at all. In Star Trek 4, when they were inserting those profanity pieces, because that's how people talk then, And it was awkward for Kirk in that because he was getting it wrong.
Yep.
That was funny. That made sense. That was actually kind of making fun of what profanity is.
Yeah.
That's not what they're doing here at all.
No.
That's just part of their normal language is to use profanity.
Yeah, which is weird because, again, like you pointed out in previous iterations of Star Trek, better iterations of Star Trek, well, they handled this better. And again, they made it seem like it was something that they didn't naturally do, and it was a funny moment. This, like, why would this be naturally in their vocabulary?
I have no idea.
All of a sudden swearing came back? Whatever.
And speaking of Star Trek 4, I just want to state that this episode was essentially Star Trek 4 retold.
Yeah.
They just did it in a different way. But I mean, you had your moment. Remember when Chekhov fell and he had that brain hemorrhage, and they were doing all these similar things when they slingshot around the sun.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, they had these, like, I don't know, like wax heads or whatever coming up as visuals of that they were going through some sort of like time vortex. They didn't do that here, but they did something similar where weird stuff was happening as they were going back. And you could say, oh, that's just homage. Well, it's homage to the point that they basically were lifting Star Trek 4 pieces and putting them in the episode.
Yep. Anyways, the Borg Queen told Agnes that she impressed her. So I guess that's a foreshadowing of something terrible there.
I mean, did she implant something in Agnes that's going to...
Oh, probably. Well, because I said that at the time. I'm like, how can they half assimilate her and then just pull her out and then it's fine? I mean, I thought there were supposed to be nanites that were exchanged.
I don't think there's like an easy... You can't purge that just by disconnecting a cable.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously Seven was stuck with her implants, which again, I mean, after a certain point that would happen. But even at the very beginning, those nanites would be coursing through Agnes. So how the hell did they decide that this was just okay? Either I misunderstood how this worked in the past, or the writers don't understand how it works. I don't know. I mean, I am open to the fact that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong and I misunderstood how people were assimilated. But if it is the way that I understand it, that nanites are sent into the body, which starts to change the body, then this shouldn't have been a simple matter of just pulling off that cord or cable or whatever the hell.
Well, they almost treated it like it was a Vulcan mind meld.
Yeah.
And that by just breaking that cable connection, like when with Spock, you would get his hands off of the person that he was mind melding with. Like that would sever the connection. That's how they treated this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just... yeah, I think fan fiction would have done better service to how that was written, because usually fans pay far closer attention to how things are supposed to work and bring that attention to detail to what they do than these writers are for this current iteration of Star Trek.
I mean, we'll see if later in the series if that comes back, because Picard didn't want her doing this. In fact, they spent a bit of time, Picard going, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
But he didn't mention anything about what you're talking about, like those dangers right there.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. I mean, of all the problems I had with the episode, that was the least of them, but it certainly was worth mentioning.
Yeah, so let's go back to the other three. Seven, Rafi, and Rios. They are beamed to LA, but they don't all land together.
They land separately, I believe.
Land separately in different areas near the building where they need to go to the highest point and scan. So Seven lands right in front of, materializes in front of a little girl, and the little girl asks her if she's a superhero. And of course, Seven tells her to, keep her secret. And so, I mean, that could have been a cute moment if it wasn't on such a terrible show at this point. Mm-hmm. Rafi, she materializes near a homeless camp, and immediately this white male tries to mug her. I can't say that there were any good representations of white males in this episode.
Because you had the stupid security guard that you saw later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I try not to fall into that because lots of people try to say that there's an agenda against, white males on these CBS shows. But boy, in this episode, males were either stupid or bad people.
Yeah.
Or incompetent, because
the security guy was obviously incompetent.
Seven landed correctly. Rafi landed correctly. What happened to Rios?
Well, I'll get to that in just a second. But Rafi was able to fight off the mugger, and then she mugged him and stole his money out of his wallet. Then Seven shows up, and then we got some sort of social commentary, which was so fucking tone deaf. And then we go to Rios, and he materialized like 1 story up from the ground, and he falls flat on his face onto a sidewalk.
Comedically. Like, if you've watched The Peacemaker, when he was stealing those records from that alien, and he was going down that, I think it was an apartment complex, and he was jumping from patio to patio, and it was just kind of like, it was kind of funny, but, kind of cringy. This was like an attempt at doing something similar, but it just was, no. The fool fell down, hit this thing, and then he splatted on the ground, and there was blood trickling out of his ear.
Yeah, it was like Wile E. Coyote, except with blood. So anyway, some people pick him up off the sidewalk and take him into a clinic. And at the clinic, it's clearly a very Hispanic clinic. I'll just say, I didn't really care for the bedside manner of the doctor. I mean, that seemed so...
Well, it was weird.
Weirdly written.
Because, like, he had a concussion, and then she's like, well, go ahead and leave if you think you can leave. I can't believe a doctor would do that, so I thought what she was going to say is, I'm not a doctor yet. Like, maybe she was a med student or a nurse or something. But no, she's a real doctor, and the way she was handling that concussion patient, I just didn't believe that was a doctor.
Yeah, and... I don't know, it kind of felt like she's going to be set up as a love interest for him, which kind of brings me back to, is this going to be their version of Edith Keeler?
Yep, where she has to die for the timeline to be set right. I hope they don't do that, but, with the people behind this series, you can never know how low they'll go.
Yeah, exactly. But she tells Rios that she isn't going to charge him for the treatment, and she's not going to report him either. So it's obvious that she is treating people who are in the country without proper documentation. Rios finally realizes that his comm badge is gone, and of course the doctor's kid has it.
They even showed that. That kid knew that came off the patient they were bringing in, which was Rios. And then he was playing this little game later with Rios about, I'm not going to give this back to you. So this kid's a thief. I mean, you saw on screen that he stole that. The kid knows that was that guy's.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to give it back.
Yeah, so Rios finds a plate of peanut butter cookies.
Like on top of
the refrigerator. And he takes one, and he's going on and on about how great real peanut butter is. And that just seemed like a really bizarre...
I'll trade you. I'll give you a peanut butter cookie for my badge.
Oh, he gave him the whole plate for the badge. Yeah. That's what he was going to do. Except the doctor, the kid's mom, intercepts the plate. She also takes the badge away, and she's like, oh, I'm going to keep this at the front desk. And, yes, I mean, it was just, oh, God, so just stupid. Telegraphing exactly what they're going to do. And, of course, then immigration raids the clinic. And, of course, the doctor and Rios both get arrested by immigration.
And the immigration guy, again, I'm not trying to hammer this point, he was an overbearing white male that was using a lot of excess force to make the arrest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much how the episode ended, with this immigration raid on a medical clinic. It felt like some sort of weird, sanitized social commentary directed at people that are looked down upon by the people who wrote the episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it felt to me, and again, I'm still worried because the year is 2024, some fascist takes over, and they made this immigration thing a big thing at the end. I'm just worried they're trying to set up here's what would happen if Donald Trump gets elected again. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping they don't go down that path, because they tried to introduce, I think, Seven and Rafi looked up and they saw like forest fires, and then you saw these camps, these homeless camps. And I think they were trying to make social commentary about things. Even Rafi, at one point, she said something like, I can't believe people made it through this sort of crap. I look at the people making this stuff. These aren't the issues. If I was going to make social commentary of what's happening right now, these aren't the issues I would worry about. I could go on and on what I would talk about, but I think YouTube would kick me off if I did that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would be talking about, yes, is it wrong that you have these raids happening to people who don't have documentation. I mean, as a humanitarian, you don't want violence and stuff being done to these people. But we have far larger problems in this world. I mean, even the climate thing, it's like, well, what are you going to do with that? I just think that was a throwaway line they're not even going to do anything with. I don't understand. The first 10 minutes of this episode, I was nodding, going, maybe this can work for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Star Trek, but it feels like it could be a fun fan film.
Yep.
And then they interjected all this crap. We talked about the Rafi and Seven were like going up to the roof there, and that security guy was there. And he was some white dude, and he was just a moron.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't understand. Why do you have to insert that all white males are morons or evil or incompetent?
Yep.
Why do you have to do that? I don't understand. That is not doing anything useful except showing bigotry on your part and making a bad situation even worse.
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all. I don't know when these people are going to stop and understand that that's not the solution. That is not the solution, is to bash white males and say problem solved.
Yep.
I would rather them show how women and minorities are kick-ass characters on their own, and you don't need to squash down on a white male to say that's an awesome character. But in order to do that, you have to write an awesome character. And I have yet to see in any of these Star Treks by CBS any awesome female characters. I have yet to see that.
Yep.
I would like, hell, I don't even think I have seen any awesome characters, male or female, from CBS Star Trek.
Nope.
They just say, oh, you're the best.
Yeah.
Why are you the best? But just because you are the best. I know we're going down a slippery slope on the channel here, but Molly and I have talked before that we are not aligned with either political party because we think they combined are causing a great amount of damage to this country and world. So when we say this stuff, we're outside the two parties. We are not complaining that Democrats are the problem or Republicans are the problem, but combined together, they're the problem. What are we supposed to do? I don't know. Those are complicated questions. I don't know if having an old man on a YouTube channel and asking him what the solution is really the best idea. But I do know what we're doing now isn't working. And then, you go back to, it's so coincidental because we've been behind a few weeks because of moving. And we watched this episode after the Will Smith Oscars incident. And seeing the privilege going on with the Oscars and how that went down and how the ramifications of that pretty much are going to be non-existent. And then seeing these rich writers and actors walking around Picard in this episode and trying to paint some sort of picture of what they think the problems are in current day. Out of touch is the only thing that comes to mind. You get too much money and you get enough people telling you you're awesome and you just lose any sort of reality roots. You're gone. You're in La La Land somewhere. You're no longer connected to the rest of humanity.
Well, plus, I'll say this also. I mean, their homeless camp was way too clean.
Yep.
And so was their clinic.
It was too small, too.
Yeah.
Those camps that are in LA, those are gigantic camps. In Oakland, California, there's several gigantic homeless camps there.
Yeah, and I mean, I used to work with a segment of the homeless population. The way they portrayed this was just... I don't know where they get their ideas about what it's like to be homeless or what a homeless camp is like. I mean, maybe they only saw it on TV and this is what they decided to portray. I don't know. I'll tell you what, though, that clinic should have been packed with people. And it should have been overrun with people trying to get medical help.
And it shouldn't be clean like that.
No.
That clinic was way too clean. It looked like a rich person's clinic.
Yep.
Not any clinics I've attended because, boy, my clinics don't look like that when I go in for emergency care.
Yeah, and I've been to the clinics that are meant for people who don't have health insurance, and they're horrible. What they showed on this sanitized version of things, they can't even do a good job at making biting social commentary on our current problems.
Mm-hmm.
They fail at that, and that should be like the easiest thing of all.
Mm-hmm.
These people, they need to just stop. Find some other line of work because you suck at this.
I don't even know why they decided to do this approach. Because the the first 10 or 15 minutes where they were kind of taking it seriously, but then they were doing some humorous stuff, why did they have to go into real world politics? Because Star Trek is a mythos unto itself. It's not the real world, but they're abandoning the mythos and doing their own thing.
Well, because they're all triggered by Orange Man bad.
That's what this feels like to me.
That's what this is.
I mean, my take on this is my guess, and I don't know, maybe it's been because we're behind in episodes. What I'm worried about is the problem that's going to exist is going to be a white business person. And if I had to guess because they want to member bury it, I'm going to guess it's a Soong, played by Brent Spiner, that's going to be some evil person that's running some corporation that's doing evil things, and that's going to be the Trump stand-in.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but that's how I feel like they're getting ready to go down. Maybe this was one bad episode. Maybe this was just...
But I doubt it.
You know, a couple of bad writers got into a bad situation with this episode. Maybe next week will be better. Because episode 1 and 2, I was recommending on this channel.
Yeah.
Because I said, you know, as fan films, it wasn't so bad.
Mm-hmm.
I can only recommend the first 10 minutes of this episode.
Yep.
And the rest of it was, remember Star Trek Discovery? Well, you're going to get that here, just set in 2024 LA, but the same messaging is going to be the same thing in Picard as it was in Discovery. So we're going to try to continue through the rest of this. I hope it was a bad episode. Maybe it's just because we finished up with that horrible Discovery, and so we're grumpy, and then when they did this, we're just double grumpy. Maybe the next episode will wake us up and we'll maybe waking up is the wrong word. We'll not be as grumpy and we'll try to see the positives for what's here. But member berries alone, along with ill-informed social commentary, that's not a way to make a television series.
No. And
all they're doing right now, in addition to the member berries, they're retelling Star Trek 4. That's all they're doing. So when people think, I've heard people say, well, this is some good storytelling. All they're doing is retelling Star Trek 4. It's not the whales this time. But remember when Chekhov fell off the aircraft carrier? That was Rios. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're just retelling Star Trek 4. I need more than member berries. That's the problem I have with Lower Decks, too. I've heard people say Lower Decks is a great show. I watched all of season 1. Season 1 is nothing but member berries. And I realize that with Star Trek Discovery that can't get member berries correct, it's kind of nice to see a series that kind of gets the member berries correct. Yeah, they understand what they're talking about. But if that's all you're doing, it's just a rehash. You're not doing anything new. That's why Lower Decks doesn't work for me. All it is just making jokes about stuff I already know about.
Yeah.
They're not moving anything forward. And this Picard thing feels the same way. It's just member berries. They're not moving anything forward. Oh, and then there was some weird thing, because you mentioned this, when he was on the ship, Picard, and they were getting ready to crash on Earth, Q appeared to Picard, but only to Picard.
Yeah.
And I didn't know Q did that to people, kind of appeared like a phantom. So was Q really there? Or was that just Picard, projecting his whatever onto the moment?
Let's not forget, Picard is an android.
Yeah.
So I would assume that any of these weird little bizarre functions of our brains that cause hallucinations and things...
that shouldn't be in him.
Exactly.
Because it's not like they put his brain in a robot body. They transferred his memories, his essence, into silicon, or their version of silicon. So this is a robot. And again, if Q is trying to put Picard on trial for human atrocities, this is not a human Picard. This is an android. I'm hoping they realize that this will not work. If they're trying to make Picard be the defender of humanity like he was in The Next Generation, he can't be that as a human because he's not human anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have to say about this episode. Do you have anything else?
I was extremely disappointed because so far this season was going better.
Yep.
And this was so disappointing.
Yep, now we're right back to where we were in season 1.
Yep.
So, anyways... like, subscribe, comment, and thanks for watching.
Take care.